Good afternoon, and thank you for joining the first virtual public information meeting for the I-95 Eastern Connecticut Planning and Environmental Linkages Study. I'm Amy Livingston, and I will be your facilitator for today's meeting. Before we get started, I want to first go through a few of the technology features that we'll be using today to make sure that you're able to get the most out of this meeting. Following the presentation today, we will be opening this up for a live question and answer session. If you have any questions while the presentation is going on, please feel free to put those into the Q&A tool at any time. You may find the Q&A tool by hovering over the presentation you see on the screen now. I'll give you a second to do that. That should bring up a little black box that looks like the one that's found on my slide. Click the icon that shows the two chat bubbles. You may type a question in there at any time, and we'll come back to those when we start the Q&A session. You will see that we've included numbers on our slides just in case you'd like to reference a particular slide in your question. You may notice that the chat box will not allow you to send messages, but only to receive them. That's so that we can make sure that all of the questions for the Q&A session come through that Q&A tool so we don't miss any. However, we will be putting some links into the chat throughout, so you don't have to worry about writing them down so quickly or taking a screenshot. If you have any technical issues today, you can email us at info@I-95 Eastern Connecticut easternct.com or call or text us at 860-380-0190. I'm going to read that aloud for someone who might be on the phone. Again, it is 860-380-0190. And if you're looking for that email address, it's in the chat box. We want to make sure this experience is as inclusive as possible, so live captions are automatically being provided by Zoom in this meeting. To access them, you again hover over this presentation to bring up the black toolbar. You should see an icon that says CC for closed captions. From there, you can turn on the closed captions and select the language if English is not your primary language. Haga clic para ver subtítulos en vivo. Puede elegir el idioma de los subtítulos. Todos los materiales, incluyendo esta presentación, están disponibles en español en el sitio web ahora. So, today is about introducing you to the I-95 Eastern Connecticut Planning and Environmental Linkages Study and having your questions answered. To do so, let's make sure that we use respectful language. You'll also note that you have been muted. We understand that not everyone will be able to type or write their questions, so there will be an opportunity to raise your hand virtually or on the phone later when we're in that Q&A session. We'll be able to unmute you so you can answer those questions then. As a reminder, this presentation is being recorded and will be available on the study website and YouTube as soon as possible. Please remember, we're at the very beginning of the early stages of this planning project. So at this point, no decisions have been made as to the improvements that will be moving forward, but we are instead looking for your help in guiding those. At the end of this presentation, we will outline the multiple ways you can have your voice heard. We're looking forward to hearing that. Connecticut DOT complies with the Title VI and Civil Rights Act. No person shall, on the basis of race, color, or national origin, be excluded from participation or subject to discrimination in the development of this study. In the chat box, we're putting the links to these two important documents. A flyer with information regarding how Connecticut DOT is complying with the Civil Rights Act. Additionally, there is a link to an optional feedback and demographics survey. We ask that you please let us know about your experience with us here today in the survey so we can make the next meeting even better. And so at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Gary Soika, our DOT project manager, to begin our formal presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining. As Amy said, my name's Gary Soika. I'm the project manager on the DOT side. Welcome to the first public informational meeting for the I-95 Eastern Connecticut Planning and Environmental Linkages Study, also known as PEL. So one of the key benefits of the PEL process, which you will hear about during the presentation, is the opportunity to engage you early in the process to help us create a vision for this corridor by helping us define the purpose and need for any future projects. During this formal comment period, which is running from November 1st through the 30th, we are looking to better understand your day-to-day concerns when driving or riding in this corridor. Next slide, Amy. Today's meeting, we will start by playing a video to introduce the PEL study, discuss current conditions of the corridor, and explain the draft purpose and needs statement and how you can make a comment. Then we will move to the live Q&A session, as Amy discussed. As Amy mentioned, if you have a question anytime throughout the presentation, feel free to go ahead and enter it into the chat. Questions will be answered aloud during the Q&A session. Now I'm just going to introduce the rest of the DOT project team and our consultant team. So as I stated, I'm Gary Soika. With us also today is Shada Josie. She's a PE and project engineer. Craig Babowitz, also he's the assistant project manager on the project. Kevin Fleming is our environmental planner. Dave Elder is a transportation assistant planning director, and Marissa Pfaffinger is a principal engineer. Also with us on our CDM Smith team, Krista Gooden, our project manager, Becca Hall, deputy project manager, Paul Smith, technical advisor, Scott Harley, engineering lead, Gio Castanino, environmental lead, and Amy Livingston, who have you already met, is our public outreach lead. Thank you. From now we're going to move to the presentation portion. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy and Gary. The Connecticut Department of Transportation is performing a planning and environmental linkages, or PEL study, to identify transportation improvements along I-95 from Branford at exit 53 to the Rhode Island state line. I'm Krista Gooden, and I'm serving as the project manager for our CDM Smith team. Joining me today is Becca Hall, my deputy project manager, and Amy Livingston, my public outreach lead. The map on the screen shows the study area, which is approximately 59 miles long. Within the study area, there are 45 interchanges and 2 major bridges, the Baldwin Bridge and the Gold Star Memorial Bridge. Additionally, the corridor passes through 3 metropolitan transportation planning regions, 3 counties, and 13 towns. Let's start with a little background on the I-95 Eastern Corridor PEL study. The I-95 corridor was previously studied in 2004 and later updated in 2018. Both studies identified the need for additional capacity on I-95 to address increasing congestion. And both studies also recommended improvements, including widening in some areas and safety and design improvements at interchanges, including at the on and off ramps. Connecticut DOT initiated the PEL study in early 2022 to formalize the purpose and need, involve the Federal Highway Administration and environmental resource agencies, such as the United States Environmental Protection Agency and the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, or DEEP, to name a few. The PEL study was also initiated to solicit public input on the transportation issues and potential methods for improving the corridor, known in the transportation planning world as concepts or alternatives. Additionally, the Federal Highway Administration encouraged the use of the PEL process to help narrow down the development of potential alternatives prior to beginning the environmental clearance process. Connecticut DOT recognizes the challenges that motorists face daily along the corridor and intends to identify short-range improvements that can be implemented quickly. We will also determine long-term solutions for the next phase of the project development process as funding becomes available. Interstate 95 through Connecticut was constructed from 1941 to 1973. It originally was designed as an alternative to US Route 1 to serve both as a regional connector and for local use. This emphasis led to the development of several interchanges along the corridor that you see today. So what is the Planning and Environmental Linkages, or PEL study? Let's talk about the process, the benefits, and anticipated outcomes. The Planning and Environmental Linkages, or PEL process, was developed by FHWA about 10 years ago to create efficiency in transportation planning and project development. The PEL process considers the environment, the community, and economic conditions, and is intended to be a collaborative, integrated process for decision-making. This is achieved by ensuring local, state, and federal agencies, the environmental resource agencies like those who oversee environmental concerns, and the public work together early in the planning process. Now let's talk about what the benefits are to doing a PEL study. The PEL process combines planning, engineering, and National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA-like activities. It encourages early and meaningful public engagement. Our intent is to provide clear messaging on the desired goals and outcomes of the PEL study. It also promotes environmental stewardship by engaging with the federal and state environmental resource agencies early in the process and identifying any potential environmental concerns and impacts prior to the formal federal environmental review phase called NEPA. It assists with the project delivery by minimizing duplication, and finally, reduces delays in implementation by expediting some of the NEPA-related activities and decision-making early on with FHWA. For example, this process will allow us to identify some of the early actions the department can take to begin addressing your concerns in the corridor that may not require a federal environmental review. The outputs or products of the PEL process help the Connecticut DOT and decision makers with expediting the project development process by starting those NEPA-like activities, such as drafting the purpose and need, identifying the reasonable alternatives, and identifying preliminary impacts, potential permits, and mitigation requirements. We also hope to have an engaged and educated public and resource partner agencies that will continue during the NEPA phase. As part of this PEL process, we will develop an action plan that includes NEPA-ready projects, noting the potential phasing and programming recommendations. The NEPA process and preliminary design can start immediately at the conclusion of a PEL study as funding becomes available. So how do we get there? Following the initiation of the PEL study, we identified the transportation problems in the corridor using data. As part of this public meeting, we are hoping to hear from you to make sure that what the data tells us aligns with your day-to-day experiences. Next, we will develop the purpose and need with input from the public and agencies. As you will hear today, we have a draft. However, this is another place where we are looking for your feedback to make sure that proposed improvements reflect the need you see in this corridor. Next, we will develop the concepts and evaluation criteria for how each concept will be evaluated or screened to determine if it meets the purpose and need you have helped us to define. Based on that evaluation criteria, we will screen the alternatives and then identify the reasonable alternatives. At the next public meeting, we will present those reasonable alternatives that address the purpose and need for your feedback. And at the conclusion of the PEL process, we will prepare a final PEL study report and FHWA PEL questionnaire. This will include the future projects that are needed in the corridor, along with recommended phasing for implementation. So let's recap what we've done so far. As I stated before, the PEL study was initiated in early 2022. The study team has been analyzing the existing and future traffic and safety information to identify the transportation issues. We've also initiated the outreach activities and began defining the environmental conditions. Next, we will provide a summary of the demographics, traffic conditions, roadway and bridge conditions, safety analysis, and environmental resources within the study area. Providing transportation for all users is a priority for Connecticut DOT. While we go through these statistics on the next few slides, we recognize that it's important to understand not only the potential number of users of the system as demonstrated by the population numbers, but also their needs. As we age, our transportation needs are changing over time, including where we are going, how we get there, and what times we choose to go. As we look across the region that the study area resides in, we have a fairly even distribution of people from all age categories. However, we have double the number of people who are over 50 compared to any other category. We also recognize that while the corridor is by and large mostly white, we want to note the diversity in our area and make sure individuals who are of different backgrounds and cultures have a seat at the table during this planning process. We must be thoughtful and inclusive of the ideas and feedback of communities with environmental justice concerns. As you see here and on subsequent slides, not only is New Haven County our largest in terms of population, it also has greater diversity. In that same sense, we recognize that our study area also includes people whose incomes are below the poverty threshold and households that do not own a vehicle. Again, we see that New Haven County has a higher percentage of individuals below the federal poverty threshold and higher percentage of households without a vehicle compared to the state of Connecticut as a whole. Understanding today's landscape is only one piece of the puzzle. Connecticut DOT wants to make sure we are designing improvements that help fix today's problems, but also look ahead to what the challenges might be in the future. For instance, we are running all of our traffic analyses through the year 2050. That's over 25 years from now. And while no one has a crystal ball, our traffic models use the best available data to understand trends like population growth and employment growth, both drivers of traffic congestion along the I-95 corridor. As you will see, this study area is anticipated to grow faster in both categories, people and jobs, than the state as a whole, with an anticipated 18% population growth and an impressive 26% growth in jobs across the study area. Now I'd like to ask Becca Hall to share more information on traffic engineering and safety conditions.
Thank you, Krista. Now that we've talked about anticipated growth in people and employment, we probably all anticipate an increase in use of the corridor. Average annual daily traffic, or AADT, is the average daily number of vehicles using the corridor. We look at the total number of vehicles at a certain point on the highway for the entire year in both directions, and then divide that total number of days in a year, 365. This is a number we will refer to in the next slides. Looking at the beginning of the corridor in Branford in 1958, when I-95 was first operational, it carried 40,000 vehicles a day. Moving to where we are now, in 2016, it carries 105,000 vehicles with 9% trucks, which is an increase of 163%. Looking to the future, in 2045, we anticipate I-95 in Branford will carry 135,000 vehicles, which is an increase of 29%. Moving east along the corridor to the Baldwin Bridge area, we see the same initial volume of 40,000 in 1958. Today, there is 97,000 vehicles with 11% trucks, which is a slight decrease in vehicles compared to the Branford area shown on the previous slide, but a 143% increase from 1958. In 2045, we are predicting a 30% increase to 126,000 vehicles in the Baldwin Bridge area. Taking a closer look at the summer traffic volumes along I-95, we found that Fridays are the busiest travel day on the corridor, with 12% higher than average volume. With many recreational destinations like beaches, the aquarium, and marinas, we are not surprised that many people leave on Friday to start their weekend. Looking further into this, we see that Fridays in August along the corridor have a 25% higher than average volume, with people enjoying that final summer weekend. Looking at speeds in the northbound direction, heading to Rhode Island on Saturdays, the average speed is 34 miles per hour between Branford and Madison, with a posted speed limit of 65 miles per hour. This occurs on Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. In the southbound direction, on Sundays, the average speed is 32 miles per hour between Waterford and Old Lyme. This occurs from 1 p.m. to 8 p.m. This is when people are traveling home from their weekend in Mystic, Rhode Island, or the Cape. As Krista mentioned, I-95 was intended to be a local and regional route, and there are many interchanges and on and off ramps to accommodate this. 49 interchanges and 156 on or off ramps on the 59-mile corridor. 48% of these interchanges are too closely spaced, like exits 86 and 87 in Groton. There are 5 left-hand on-ramps and off-ramps, which are atypical for us as drivers and can lead to slower traffic in the left lane. Many of the shoulders along the corridor are too narrow, between 4 and 11 feet, when current standard is 12 feet. 70% of the off-ramps and 55% of the on-ramps are too short. This causes drivers to slow down on the main line. 6 bridges are in poor condition. 40 off-ramps and 33 on-ramps have curves that are too tight. And the I-95 main line also has 7 curves that are too tight with steep grades. Looking at the safety analysis. The safety analysis reviewed the Connecticut Crash Data Repository for 2018, 2019, and 2020. Over this 3-year period, there were 2,925 crashes with a relatively even split northbound and southbound. About a quarter of the crashes included an injury, and there were 19 fatalities. During the summer weekends, crashes were 67% higher than the annual average. I will now turn it over to Krista to discuss the environmental resources.
Thanks, Becca. Early in the PEL process, our project team conducted an environmental scan to identify the social, natural, and cultural resources that may exist within the study area. The purpose of this environmental review is to identify those resources early in the planning process and to identify constraints and potential fatal flaw resource areas for use in the alternative evaluation process. For cultural social resources, the team identified 19 archaeological sites, 62 historic properties, 12 cemeteries, 33 public parks, recreational areas, and wildlife waterfowl refuges, and 9 sites that were purchased with land and water conservation funds. There are also 18 communities with environmental justice concerns within the project corridor. This includes census block groups with a population majority that is minority, low income, and/or populations with limited English proficiency. For natural resources, the team identified 45 areas along the corridor that crossed floodplains and channel crossings, 18 areas that are known to have protected species, and 16 areas that are within the coastal zone. Now that we've talked about who is using the corridor, what are the conditions, and what type of transportation problems we are seeing, we develop a preliminary purpose and needs statement for public and stakeholder input. So what exactly is a purpose and needs statement? The purpose and needs statement tells us why the project or study is being conducted. It conveys the study area's vision and goals while incorporating the transportation issues and problems identified in the early data collection and analyses. The purpose and needs statement is essentially the foundation of the decision-making process of the PEL study and future National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, analysis. The purpose of improvements along the I-95 Eastern Connecticut corridor is to reduce congestion and improve travel time along Interstate 95 from exit 53 in Branford to the Rhode Island state line. The transportation needs within the corridor are organized by mobility issues and roadway deficiencies. The mobility issues we have identified so far include interchange and weaving operating conditions, congestion and overcapacity interstate facilities, unreliable travel times, and congestion-related crashes on I-95. The roadway deficiencies we have identified so far include areas of poor pavement and bridge condition, steep longitudinal grades, insufficient acceleration, deceleration ramp lengths, substandard interchange geometrics and interchange spacing, and substandard shoulder widths. Study goals are not the project needs or project purpose, but provide guidance for the concepts and alternatives development. They help tell the story of how the improvements should fit within the context of the community and reflect previous public input and engagement from the previous studies on the corridor, as well as regional planning studies. The draft goals for the I-95 Eastern Connecticut PEL study are improve capacity, improve safety, enhance mobility, improve transit connections, and accommodate future transportation technology. So here are a few next steps to keep in mind following the first virtual public information meeting. We will be finalizing the purpose and need with input from the public and resource agencies later this fall. We will be developing the concepts and screening methodology. Next spring in 2023, we will be screening the concepts and identifying the reasonable alternatives. We will then plan to hold the second virtual public information meeting next summer. Finally, we anticipate the final PEL study report for next fall 2023. Here's a quick look at what happens once we finalize the PEL study. The individual projects identified in the PEL study action plan can then progress into the NEPA phase as funding becomes available. The NEPA phase is where we confirm or refine the purpose and need, conduct the detailed environmental studies and a noise analysis, refine the alternatives, explore mitigation and commitments, and prepare the decision document. Project implementation includes the final design, right-of-way acquisition, permitting and mitigation, and construction. And finally, the maintenance of the roadway and right-of-way continues for the life of the facility. Now I would like to ask Amy Livingston to provide more information on how you can stay involved on this study.
Thank you to the team for providing that wonderful overview. I'm sure you all have a lot of thoughts, ideas, and questions coming to mind. So let's talk about how you can have your voice heard. Getting your feedback is our #1 priority. There are several ways you can provide your input. You can provide a comment on our study website. We'll put the link in the chat now for you. At this link, you can also explore all the information we've covered today at your own pace. Additionally, we have an online survey on the website. The formal comment period for this virtual meeting is open through the end of this month, so make sure to visit our website, take our survey, email us, or send a letter by November 30th, 2022. While we're open to hearing your feedback at any time, having your comment by November 30th allows us to take that feedback into consideration as we move into the next step in this process. If you haven't already, please make sure to follow us on Facebook and visit our website to sign up to get study updates. We'll also put those links in the chat for you now. Now we'll transition to the question and answer session. Before we get started, I want to go over a few reminders to make sure this session is as useful to all participants as possible. While we understand that projects can bring about a lot of emotion, please remember to keep your words and actions respectful. This will allow the team to best understand your questions so they can answer appropriately. Please also remember that this session, it's about asking questions. It's not about providing a verbal comment. So as we mentioned, there are many ways to provide a comment, including emailing us or filling out a comment form on our website. We anticipate that many questions, they might be similar. So instead of you having to listen to slight variations, we'll try to answer similar questions at one time. As a reminder, this is being recorded and will be available on the study website and YouTube as soon as possible. We do have a copy of this presentation already up, but a full recording, including these question and answers, will be available afterwards as well. To avoid everyone talking over one another, all participants will remain muted unless they're unable to type the question. So let's talk about this. We'll begin by answering questions that are submitted through the question and answer tool. And I see we have a few that are already in there. Please go ahead and start asking those questions. To find that, please hover over this presentation until you see the black toolbox. The question and answer tool has 2 comment bubbles on it. When your question has been answered aloud, you'll receive a notification of such. If you are participating by phone only or unable to type into the question and answer tool, we ask that you raise your hand. If you're on the phone and you want to raise your hand, please enter *9. It will show up like you have a raised hand. If you are on the computer, you'll find the hand raised in the same black toolbox. But again, we're going to start with those who are written in the Q&A tool, and we would encourage you to use that. If you are making a verbal question, please make sure to limit your question to no longer than 2 minutes. As a reminder, this session is for questions to be answered, not for comments. Instead, to have a response to your comment, please make sure to email us at info@I-95easternct.com or complete a comment form on the study website, I-95easternct.com. We'll put those links in the chat for you. If you're having technical difficulty, please feel free to call or text us at 860-380-0190. So as we get started, I'd like to first open the floor to any elected officials that we have here today. If you would raise your hand, then our team can unmute you one at a time in the order in which your name appears. So I'm going to pause for a second and see if I can't look and see if we have any elected officials here today with their hands raised. I'm going to give another minute. If you're looking for that toolbox, make sure to hover over the presentation. It'll show up black and there's a little hand. I'm not seeing any right now, but if you are having trouble doing that, we can come back around to you in a little bit. That's all right. So as a reminder, go ahead and put those questions in the Q&A tool and we'll get to them. So let's see what the first question is. All right, first question. Will the completion of the planning environmental linkages study recommend a final singular solution? Gary, do you want to kick us off with this one?
Sure. I just want to apologize. I turned my camera on and the background is let me try it one more time. I don't want you guys to see my purple face, so I apologize. I'm gonna shut my camera off, but I also, before we begin, I want to recognize some other DOT folks that are on the call. We have our planning Bureau and Policy and Planning Bureau Chief Kim Lassay, as well as our Director Robert Bell. And who else do we have? We have Brett Stark as well from DOT. So hopefully between the DOT team and our consultant team, we should hopefully be able to answer all your questions. So first question, I'll just repeat it. Will the completion of the PEL recommend a singular final solution? Simple answer is no. The intent of the PEL process is to identify and screen a broad range of reasonable alternatives that can be carried forward into the NEPA process, most likely resulting in several separate breakout projects.
Thanks, Gary. All right, let's move along to the next question. Have you started to collect data on potential impacts on local communities? If so, what are they? And has Connecticut DOT been interacting with local governments to gauge concerns and needs? To get this started, Gary, I'm going to pass this back over to you.
Sure, thank you. Yes, we have initiated our data collection for environmental resources, safety, traffic, roadway, bridge, geometrics, so on, within the study area boundaries, as was shown on the map earlier. We're also doing a high-level scan at this stage of the PEL process. Part 2 of the question is, yes, in the next month or so, we have meetings scheduled with our local council of governments, as well as the municipalities. Will be reaching out to them much in the same fashion as we did here today. Also, we have already reached out to our interagency committees like FHWA, SHPO, and some other federal organizations. So they're involved as well in this study. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Appreciate that. So our next question is related to widening. What kind of widening is the study considering? Is this overall lane widening or strategic spot widening? Will any aspects of the study consider eminent domain? Again, Gary, I'm going to start off with you and feel free to pass it along to anyone else.
Sure. We are, and you're probably going to hear this over and over again, but we are in the very early stages of this study. We do not have any recommendations at this time for any widening or any other specific improvements. We're looking for your, where are your concerns? Tell us where you're experiencing either issues with interchanges or any lane drops in the corridor, or any issues where we have just any possible issues that you have within the corridor. That's why we're basically here today.
Thanks,
If anyone else wants to jump in, feel free.
Well, I'm just going to chime in on that note. You're going to hear us say it a number of times, but there are a lot of ways that we would love to get in engagement. And when you're talking about widening, that reminds me of the survey that we have available. If you go to the study website, we have a survey live through November 30th, and it talks about what your concerns are, but it also talks about priorities for the types of solutions that you all would like to hear about. So when you hear us say that over and over again, you can put in that survey. You see this email address that we popped in the chat. Feel free to send it to us there. So let's move along to the next question we have here. I know we have a number of them coming in. The next question is, how much of the study will be informed by previous studies of this corridor? So Gary, I'm going to start with you there, and then if you want to hand it off to somebody else, feel free.
Sure, thank you. Information gained from the previous studies will be considered, provided the recommendations are still in line with the current purpose and need. Previous studies incorporated, previous studies incorporated input I'm sorry.
Hey, Gary, I'll help you out.
Yeah, go ahead.
So
thank you.
Really, the PEL process is planning. What that means is the planning part of the PEL process is to look for any previous studies that have been conducted as part of the corridor or related to the corridor, as well as any of those long-range transportation plans that our regions develop, to understand, what the community has been looking for. So those previous studies, we look at what's the previous input from the community. We also are looking at what the data was back in 2004 and then updated again in 2008. And then for our PEL process, we've taken some of that data and we've updated it again. So basically, it's more about what did we hear from the community to help us develop the preliminary study goals. And what we're asking for you today is to give us more feedback and information on what you see with the transportation concerns and problems along the corridor, as well as providing input on the preliminary study goals.
Thank you, Krista. Appreciate that. Well, with that, I'm going to move along to the next question, and I think I could answer this one for you. So the question was about when When were the comments available to be made online, and why do we have less than 15 days? So we did open up the comment period on November 1st. At that time, we put all the materials available online, sent out some email blasts, did some advertising, but we wanted to put this live question and answer session about midway through the comment period. So that way, if you had an opportunity to look at those materials, had questions, you could bring them here. Or if you just happened to hear about this session and came in without seeing any of it, we wanted to make sure you also had that opportunity. And just as a reminder, I want to reiterate, I mean, this is the formal comment period, but we're open to hearing your feedback anytime. Just having that comment by November 30th allows us to take that feedback into consideration as we move into the draft purpose and need and keep the project going. So please make sure that you are visiting our website, signing up for alerts, following us on Facebook. We're open to your feedback at any point in time. So with that, I'm going to move along to the next question. This one is about mass transit, and it is, will the study focus on mass transit at all? With this one, I'm going to pass this over to you, Dave, if you want to kick us off.
Sure, thanks, Amy. And when I'm done, if anyone wants to elaborate, they can. So, as the first part of the presentation you saw, we really have done a deep dive on the data in terms of crashes, volumes, as well as the growth that we have seen in the corridor. And it goes back as far as 2000 and back to the question of the earlier studies. We have a study from 2004 and we have a study from 2018, and trends change and crashes change and volumes change as the economy changes. And so if you saw that presentation, we're absolutely going to consider any alternative that really addresses the purpose and needs of the corridor, which is yet to be decided. But if I just call your attention to, the biggest peak period on this corridor is really in the summer months on the weekends. And so when we start looking at that, and that's a heavily congested period, if it looks like mass transit can be part of the solution and an alternative to address that, we absolutely will look at mass transit. I also think it's important, we do have a good number of people on the meeting today, and it's a good plug. So for anyone who's not aware, there's also a very large comprehensive rail and bus study that's also taking place right now concurrently with the study that's also focusing on the southeastern portion of the state. And both studies are coordinating. The other study is absolutely focused on the Shoreline East and the ability to increase service on Shoreline East, as well as looking at the existing fixed route and paratransit services. So that's a very heavily transit focused study. This one started off as a very much of the highway corridor study, but we are coordinating. And if it looks like if transit could be part of the solution to addressing the purpose and the needs and purposes of the study, we're absolutely going to consider that.
Thank you, Dave. Just to follow up on that, we do have, if you're on our study website there in our FAQ section, we do have a link that talks a little bit about this Eastern Connecticut rail study. So if you're looking for that and looking for additional information, we could find it there. So if I don't hear anything from anyone else on the team, I'm going to move along to the next question here. Make sure you guys are continuing to put those questions in. We want to make sure that we get them answered today for you. So the next question is really, it's about induced demand. So will the study look at the effect of induced demand by adding more lanes? And I know we have a couple of questions related to this. I'm going to kick this one off and start with you, Krista, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. So actually, I'm going to ask Kim Lassay real fast to explain what induced demand is for the folks on the call that may not know what that means. Kim, do you mind just giving a quick explanation of what that is?
Sure. Just in simple terms, that is along the lines of, if you build it, they will come. If we add lanes on a highway, that even though it does add extra capacity, very early on, that very quickly that fills up as people feel that maybe perhaps they won't run into the traffic that they used to before, that they'll make that decision to stay in their cars and not look for other modes of transportation, and that those lanes that were built will infill very quickly. We have seen this across the nation. There's many studies about this phenomenon. It is real, and we do recognize it. And our travel simulation modeling does include an induced demand factor. So it's certainly something that is on our mind. And when we talk about addressing capacity, that doesn't necessarily mean that we're necessarily looking at lanes. Again, this study will take a look at a wide range of alternatives to address different factors that lead to congestion, such as weaving or the spacing between interchanges, just to name a few. With Krista, hopefully that's a good kickoff for you. I'll send it back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Kim, for explaining that. So, as Kim said, really where we are in the process right now is understanding what the data is telling us, but then hearing from you all of what your experiences are. And the next step that we do is we develop a draft purpose and need. So you've seen the preliminary statement today. That will get refined as we get input from you all, as well as we complete our data analyses. Then the next step is we're developing concepts. And as Kim said, we understand that there is a limitation to right-of-way expansion along the I-95 corridor. It's just a reality that the department understands. But the PEL process, it allows us to look at not just specifics to adding lanes, but also those non-widening strategies that can help improve the capacity. And as Kim said, looking at what the needs are telling us, the weaving. So looking at, can the lanes be reconfigured, looking at interchange modifications, even things like transportation systems management, like ramp metering or part-time shoulder use, but also understand that as vehicle technology is emerging, the DOT is on the forefront for preparing for those types of things. So making sure that our PEL process is also looking at, intelligent transportation systems opportunities like traffic incident management, having, signage with on like current weather information, as well as any traveler information for upcoming traffic incidents, as well as things like accommodating for future technology of autonomous, connected, and electric vehicles. So there's a wide range of things that we will be looking at as we develop our concepts.
Wow, Krista, that was a pretty comprehensive list. I'm sure that helped everyone understand really this huge range of options that we're looking at here. So I appreciate that, Krista and Kim. Let's move along to the next question here. Will this project accommodate the possibility of moving Amtrak's Northeast Corridor right-of-way into the I-95 footprint? So Dave, I'm going to send this one back over to you if you wouldn't mind giving us an answer.
Sure. So kind of going back to the other question about transit, bus or rail. So that's a very specific solution. And this PEL, we're not going to get to that level of solutions. If rail or bus appear to be any part of one of the alternatives to achieve the objective in terms of purpose and need along the I-95 corridor, we'll look at those options, but we wouldn't look at the level of detail of moving a specific rail line into the highway. That's a whole different level of complexity, and that's much beyond the concept. So we will not go that far. I feel like that's pretty safe to say. So we will consider bus and rail in all fashions, but we wouldn't get to that level of detail.
Thanks, Dave. That's a really great clarification. I think the PEL process feels a little new, and so sometimes it's really helpful to understand what level of detail are we really getting here before we kind of take it to the next step, as Krista mentioned in her presentation. So I think sort of similarly, let's talk about bike and ped, right? So would your study cover pedestrian cyclist improvements along I-95 for on and off ramps? I mean, Dave or Gary, do you want to kind of hop back into that one?
Yeah, I can jump in. Thank you. Yeah, we're considering all modes of transportation in this corridor. So it's like I said again, we're in the early stages, so we haven't eliminated anything or made any suggestions, but we will be looking at everything. So we're seeking your input today, first and foremost. within the corridor. So as the study develops, we'll be looking at all opportunities for improving mobility through the corridor. Active transportation modes can help. You know, removing the short trips from the highway that maybe get on and go a few miles, and using the highway as a local road system. Some other opportunities. Dave, you got anything else to add there?
No, I think you covered it.
Hey, Gary.
Sure.
This Chris, I would just add that please make sure you take our MetroQuest survey. There is a mapping component of that survey where would love to hear your feedback. If there's particular locations where you see a need for crossing or getting from one side of I-95 to the other, you know, please provide that in the MetroQuest, the map example or the map question.
Great. Thanks, Krista.
Yeah, Krista, that's a really great point. I would suggest that if anyone is taking that survey, you may find its best functionality on your home computer. It is definitely mobile accessible, but with a 59-mile corridor, if you're trying to get into those tiny little spots on those on and off ramps, that desktop computer may be your best friend there. We do have a similar question. I'm not sure that the answer would be much different, but you know, one of them was related just kind of to improvements to the off ramps and local roads in general. So does the project recommend solutions for the off ramps to local roads, many of which are state roads? And I think the same answer probably applies. Gary, would you agree?
Yeah, there are some, obviously there's some interchanges out there that have substandard Excel, decel lanes, and also, you know, closely spaced interchanges. We are probably going to be looking at some early action projects as part of this, maybe some breakouts that we can do early as part of this study. So yes, we will be investigating that.
Thanks, Gary. So moving along, gosh, these are some really great questions. I know that you all also have some wonderful feedback. So again, just want to make sure that we're plugging the opportunity to use the opportunity to go to the project website and put those comments in there. Here's another one. It says, I know the presentation spoke about 6 bridges that are in poor condition. Does the study also include overpasses? And if so, will improvements to these structures be included in the project? Gary, why don't we get started with you?
Sure, I'll probably defer this to one of our engineers later, but yes, 6 bridges include both bridges carrying 95 and bridges over I-95. So we're going to develop a range of concepts to handle those bridges.
Sure, thanks, Gary. Go ahead.
Sorry, Gary. Hi, this is Brett Stark. I just want to note too, again, any structures that have been identified as being in poor condition may be subject to independent projects intended to address and remedy any of these existing deficiencies, independent of this PEL study or during the period that this PEL study is being done. The department strives to maintain its infrastructure in a state of good repair, and we, you know, are constantly working at developing and initiating projects to address those type of conditions here. So any bridges here that are in this corridor may be subject to some of that type of work.
Thanks, Brett. Appreciate you chiming in. That was a great response to have there. I'm going to move down to the next question. Give me just a second. All right. So can you talk about exits 74 and 75 and the dangers all over the place getting on and off? And I know we also had another question very similar, talking about the bottlenecks in East Lyme around those same exits and up to 395. Scott, I'd like to turn this over to you to get it started.
Sure, thanks, Amy. So this is a good question. Our design team noted a number of deficiencies on I-95 in this area, which include narrow left and right shoulders, steep vertical grades, and really close spacing between the exit 74, 75, and 76 on and off ramps. Also in this area, when you're traveling in the northbound direction, exit 76 is a left-hand off-ramp to I-395, which is really opposite of what driver expectations are, as most of the off-ramps in Connecticut are always located on the right side of the highway. As some may be aware, starting in the spring of 2023, the Connecticut Department of Transportation is beginning a construction project centered around the reconstruction of Interchange 74, which includes the replacement of the bridge carrying I-95 over Route 161. So while the Connecticut DOT is currently making improvements to this area of I-95, our design team will continue to investigate reasonable alternatives to really reduce congestion and improve safety in this section of I-95.
Thank you, Scott. Is there anyone else who'd like to add to that before I move along to the next question? Just going to pause here for just a second. All right. So let's talk about a couple of the other exits not too far away. Another question we have is, one area of concern is near exits 71 and 72. And a downgrade and curve that immediately follow them northbound. Would the elimination of exit 71 be a consideration at this time? Marissa, would you mind chiming in on this one?
Yeah, sure thing. So again, this is actually a great, a great example of the type of feedback that we're looking from today. So while we're not prepared to say whether eliminating an exit in one particular location or replacing it with another exit would be one of the alternatives to move forward, this type of feedback is great to hear from the public. I can say, similar to what Scott had just noted for the areas just to the east of here, that the very short weaving distances between exit 71 and 72 were noted in some of our initial data gathering. And we also were able to look at the crashes that might have been associated with that weaving distance. So that's the exact sort of data that we're looking to gather. And then hearkening back to an earlier question too about some of the earlier planning studies that have been done, actually going all the way back to 2004, the idea of eliminating one of those interchanges, either 71 or 72, was discussed and discussed with the public. So we actually have a great foundation to know what, at least back in 2004, was the original public thoughts or concerns about closing an exit like that. And we would have a process that, if that was a recommended solution, that we would follow to gain additional, feedback and input from the community if that were to be looked at. Thanks, Amy.
Awesome. Thanks, Marissa. I think you were prepared for that one. All right, let's talk about speed a little bit. Our next question is, what is the desired speed goal for the project? Is it the posted speed or something else? I'm going to open this up to Gary, David, if you guys have an answer for this one.
Sure. I would wondering if the person that asked this question could maybe reach out and clarify a little better on the question first.
Sure.
If that's possible.
Yeah, why don't, if you posted this question, go ahead and post back in the Q&A and maybe put some clarifying. Yeah. We'll go to
maybe
another
we can
question.
jump back to it.
Yeah, we'll go to another question. If you guys can send us another message through the Q&A, our team will be watching for that. And I'll move along to the next question here. All right, the next one I'm going to go to is, how will this plan address a conversion from gasoline to electric vehicles? Great question. Kim, is that something you could help us answer, please?
I certainly can. That's a great question. And the department did this year, we submitted our NEVI plan to FHWA, and that was actually approved early this fall or late in the summer, however you want to classify September. Our first year is going to focus on our alternative fuel corridors. Sorry, that's a mouthful, which includes I-95. And that is because for the first year, that is all that we are allowed to focus on as far as the federal guidance goes. I do welcome you to check out our NEVI page. Websites that are run by state agencies sometimes aren't always the best, but this one is pretty robust and gives quite a bit of information. And so we can put that link in the chat. And after we get through this first year of looking at alternative fuel corridors, that plan will be opened up and it'll be updated as we go. So please feel free to give us ideas on where you think chargers are needed. We also have public outreach that is part of our NEVI plan. So we'll get that link into the chat and hopefully that answers your question.
Thanks so much, Kim. I think it's a very timely question and on top of everyone's mind. I do want to go back to the question related to the desired speed. I think we got a little better clarification. So in our presentation, we indicated that 35 miles an hour is too slow if the highway is crowded. So what would the desired speed be that you're looking for? And this is kind of where they're headed. So what is the desired speed goal for the project?
So I'll take that. So like, again, appreciate your comments. We're going to take all these comments into consideration here as we move forward. Many of them don't have a direct answer at this time, as you know, we don't know what the concepts will be. So we do not have a set desired speed as a goal, but if it's part of the purpose and need, that will be evaluated during the PEL. So, you know, just keep throwing out those comments and questions, and, you know, we'll incorporate those as we move along. But, you know, just to reiterate, we're in the early stages, so nothing has been, you know, set in stone as to anything we're going to do here yet.
And I'll
Thanks,
just
Gary.
chime in to
Go
add
ahead.
to that, Gary. So what we are looking for along this corridor is reliable travel times from one point to another, so people can plan their trips and plan their day accordingly with safety as a priority.
Thanks, Becca. I appreciate that. I think we can all relate to trying to go somewhere and not knowing how long is it going to take me today, and the stress that's associated with that. What it sounds like to me also is this is a really great point for comments. As Gary mentioned, we love to get those on the study website, or feel free to email us on that email address that's on the screen here. Since we're talking about speed, why don't we move along to this question? It's similar but different. There are many, especially dangerous speeders on the highway who weave through traffic. I imagine it's no one that's on this call, right? They're cutting others off. Are you considering installing surveillance cameras all along the highway to help prevent such dangerous driving? So I'm going to open this up to the team. Kim, maybe this is you. If not, let someone else chime in there.
I can certainly start off. You know, the dangers on our roadways ever since the pandemic have certainly been a forefront of concern. You know, enforcement on our interstate highways is led by our partners, the state police. However, we are looking at a myriad of things that we can do here at the department. One of the things that we're working on currently, and you may have seen our work in some parts of the state. We have some work going on right now in Southbury. We are working on installing things such as you know, more flashing lights and alerts for wrong way drivers. And we are looking at what we can do to increase safety for everyone on our roadways, and that's certainly part of what we're looking at. But this is really a partnership between our state police. We do have grant programs through NHTSA that we work with both our state police and our local police departments to battle things such as DUI and some of our other programs that people might be familiar with. But it's certainly you know, something that we want to hear your feedback about. And if there are particularly dangerous you know, spots along the highway, please let us know about those. But it is something that we are very aware of, very concerned about, and working on.
Thanks, Kim. I'll just pause here just a minute in case anyone wants to add something in before I move along to the next question. All right, not hearing any. We're going to keep going because I think we have a couple more questions and we want to make sure to get these in for you. So let's talk about frontage roads here. The question here is, could this plan include developing more frontage roads so that local drivers would not need to use the highway for local trips? Marissa, I'm going to send this one your way.
Thanks, Amy. So as was noted before, the specific recommendations for different alternatives haven't been developed yet, but this is a great suggestion. It's certainly not outside the limit of what our study could consider. Frontage roads can be a really helpful tool for moving people and vehicles between closely spaced attractions. We certainly have a number of exits along this segment in some of the more urban areas where there are, either quick exits or multiple things that people could be trying to get to. So that's not outside of the realm of what could be considered under this project or under the study by any means. But again, just to reiterate the point, no specific, developed concepts have been put forward yet. So thank you for that.
Appreciate that, Marissa. Okay, just scrolling down to the next question here. And talking about our emergency responders, and that emergency response is so important to our community. So this question is, will you consider specifically reaching out to the local emergency responders for their needs and concerns on I-95? For instance, Old Lyme Fire and Ambulance volunteers respond to many accidents that happen on the 6 miles between Old Lyme exits 70 and 71. So Gary, is this something you'd like to answer or tag somebody else in the team with? Marissa, how about you? I think you have a
Hey.
little experience with this.
Sure thing. Yeah, so I think one of the interesting parts about this corridor is so much of the data that we've been looking at is focused on the interstate itself. But whoever asked this question, it's a great point to note that around all of the communities that are supporting it, different police agencies have different relationships for who's going to be responding to what. Our emergency vehicles have needs that to access the highway, and the interstate system and the way that the ramps are currently set up support those existing relationships. So before any proposal to either change or modify or in any way disrupt the existing network, coordination with individual towns is a huge part of that, and understanding what those emergency responders, what their needs are, what changes in access might look like, and how that could either be modified or accommodated. That's definitely a part of the project development process, and we recognize that our emergency responders are one of those stakeholders where their input is really important to the success of looking at how to make any changes throughout the network.
Thank you, Marissa. I appreciate that. So the next question is, why did DOT accept the new gas station and convenience store perched atop Route 1? This is adding new exit and entry ramps on the northbound 95. This is an instance where it's probably best for us to get back to you, and I just wanted to read it aloud so that everyone heard the question and knew this. So if I could ask the person who asked that question, if you could put another question into the Q&A and provide us with your contact information, we'd love to get a little bit more into this new construction project, so we could speak a little bit more intelligently with you and get you a real answer. So if you wouldn't mind, it would be great to have you do that. So I'm just going to pause during that. Just again, I know I mentioned it in the video, but if you would, please feel free to follow us on Facebook if you have not done so already. I've got the information there, and sign up for email updates on our website. That's another way. We'll be getting in touch with people after this meeting and to stay up to date with any types of ways to engage. So yeah, if you would put that in there. I've got another question that has come through. It's a 3-part question, so I'm going to kind of ask them separately as separate questions here. So the first one is related to tolls and tolling, and I'm going to come to you, Gary, with this question, so be prepared.
Sure.
Will future tolls be considered in planning the road changes? So we'll start there.
Well, what took so long for that question? First off, no, currently, we don't have approval in Connecticut to toll, that decision is more for the General Assembly. So the answer short is no, we will not be looking at tolls.
I appreciate a real simple, straightforward answer, Gary. So thank you for that. So the second part of this question is related to DOT maintenance work. The concern is that that maintenance work contributes to delays, especially in those summer months, which we saw earlier in the presentation are particularly congested. So will this plan consider how to make this maintenance safer and less inconvenient for all? So Kim, would you mind starting us off with this one?
Sure, I'll take this one. Speaking on behalf of our maintenance crews, I think we can all agree that the work that they do is extremely important. And believe me, they would not be out there during busy times unless they absolutely have to. Our teams take into consideration travel patterns that we see. They take into consideration holidays as well, and really do try to avoid doing work when traffic is heavy. So if they're out there, it's for a really good safety reason. I can recommend to ease a little bit of the pain. If you're not familiar with what used to be just recently Travel Smart, we do have an app that you can sign up for, CT Roads, very user friendly. Please check it out. You can plan for your trip. You can see if there's work planned along the roadway. You can also set it just so that you can see if there are going to be any delays with your regular daily commute. So that's the tool that you can use where we're trying to help people plan and be as transparent as we can be about work that is happening. Sometimes there's emergency work that just has to happen, to repair a guide rail or to repair any hazards or to clear debris along the highway. So, and with that, I am going to remind everyone, please move over. It is the law, and give our fellow workers a chance to work and to work safely and to get out of your way and off the roadways as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Kim. That's a great reminder. I think we could all bear to hear. We'll go ahead and try to find the name and link for that and put it in the chat for anyone who is participating. I know I've seen a lot of activity on the department's Facebook page promoting this tool as well. So the third part of this question has to do again with interchanges. So where closely spaced interchanges are used by local traffic, connecting entrance and exit ramps would facilitate current use while limiting the impact. Will similar solutions be considered? So Marissa, would you mind?
Yes, no problem. So this is sort of similar to the question about frontage roads, where this is another great example. It's also a great opportunity to plug our MetroQuest survey again. So if there is a specific location where you're thinking about that sort of ramp connectivity or that sort of access to the local road system, we really encourage you to use that survey as an opportunity to drop that pin and provide that direct feedback to us. To answer the question directly, though, yes, those sort of situations and those sort of solutions will be considered as part of the broader spectrum of potential alternatives that could come out of this study. Thank you.
Thank you, Marissa. I hope you all are really enjoying these answers. I certainly am. I'm going to go back, and I was going to say this might be the last question, but I think one just came right there. And so just keep them coming and we'll keep the answers coming. So this one is fairly similar to another question, but slightly different. So will the Connecticut DOT be considering bus-only travel lanes or other creative approaches to improving the speed and efficiency of public transportation? Additionally, is expansion of the PED bike shoreline greenway trail as part of a commuter corridor being in consideration? So I'm going to get started and pass this one over to you, Gary, to get started.
Sorry, I was muted. Basically, the answer is yes. We're, like I said earlier, we're looking at all things to consider. So just keep. I can't express enough. Just keep this feedback coming, and we're gonna jot all these questions down and sharpen our pencils and get to looking at all these different options that you guys have expressed today. So thank you.
Thanks, Gary. And I think just to add to that earlier, I know Krista mentioned all of these different types of tools that we will be looking at. And I think that's kind of what you're saying here is we will be looking at all that. So let me scroll down and find the next question here. Make sure that you are putting your Q&A in the chat. I think we're running close to the end of these, so I want to make sure that you get it answered. After we do these, I will be looking for anybody who isn't able to type. I'm going to move over to those people who maybe couldn't and had their hands raised. So that's where I'm headed next, just to let you guys know. The next question is, how is this PEL process being coordinated with other interstate sections in Connecticut? And how is the study being coordinated with other states like New York, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, their DOTs? So I'm going to kind of open this up. Kim, is this maybe something you can help with, or Dave?
Yeah, so part of the PEL process is to include other federal agencies as well as tribal entities, our MPOs, our neighboring states. So throughout the process, we will absolutely be reaching out to them in terms of any growth or data that we should have along their corridors, understanding how any changes we may make to I-95 in Connecticut could impact Rhode Island, as well as any changes that are happening in Rhode Island that they foresee impacting I-95 East. So we do work with, actually it's one of the sort of the critical elements of a PEL is that we include the federal agencies and sort of the entire umbrella of any impacted entity or any entity that could impact the study. So we are working with our neighboring states.
Thanks, Dave. I appreciate that. I know coordination, collaboration is key to the PEL process, right? That's what makes that such a great process here. I will just let you guys know that we do have a question about where you can find the complete transcript of the entire meeting after this is over. Great segue here. Just as a reminder, the study website that you see up on the screen right now, www.i95easternct.com. If you go into this /get engaged or click at the top and it says view public information meeting, then you'll be able to click there and it has all of the information from today, all of the slides. We currently have a video up that's just the video that we showed earlier. But as soon as we're able to get closed captions onto those, probably the next 2 to 3 days, we'll be putting this whole session here. We also have a session this evening at 6 o'clock, and both of those presentations will be available. If you do have Spanish speaking friends, we would encourage you to get them to come to the site. We have a full version of that presentation completely in Spanish available for them as well. So at this time, I just want to make sure that we have included everyone that is on the call. I know we've had a lot of really great typed in questions, but I want to open it up to anyone who maybe was not unable to do that and could raise their hand, or if you're on the phone, *9, and then we'll call on you and allow you to unmute yourself just to make sure your questions are answered. Again, if you're looking for that raise hand, just kind of go over on the screen to where my presentation is. If you drag your mouse over there, you'll be able to hover and there should be a black toolbar. When you come up, there's a little hand. If you'll just click on that, we'll be able to do this. But again, this is for questions. We've got lots of ways for you to provide your comments.
Hey, Amy, I think we have one written question that we
missed.
Yes, we missed. I think it was number 11.
Okay, thank you, Krista. We do not want to miss anyone's question. I'm sorry, I'm trying to scroll up to number 11. Okay, yeah, good thing. So feel free to go ahead and raise your hand. We'll come back if we need to. This is in regards to risk assessments. So with risk assessments, what level of detail is expected to be incorporated into the PEL report? And I'm going to pass this over to you, Kim.
Sure, thank you. Keeping in mind, again, that the PEL is, a really high level look at the entire corridor, but it is actually, a great risk assessment tool. One of the things that the team will be looking at what are some critical issues that are out here in the corridor, whether that be along the lines of impacts, cost, mitigation, constructability. This is really a great place for us to look down the roadway, per se, and take a look at what might be some of our bigger hurdles. So it would be on a very large, high scale, level at this point. But of course, we would carry that into, concepts and projects as those move forward. But this is actually a great tool for us to take a look at what our risks are. So thank you for that question.
Thank you, Kim. So I think that brings us to the conclusion of all of the questions that we've had here today. I don't know about you, but I'm all the time thinking of questions. Gosh, why didn't I ask that when I was online? Don't worry. You can still ask them. Number one, we have a 6 o'clock session of this. Just make sure to pre-register for that. It does have a second pre-registration. But you can also go onto our study website. You see it here, this I-95 easternct.com. You can make a comment or you could ask a question through there if you have not already. We would encourage you to follow us on Facebook and sign up for email updates to stay in touch as the study progresses. If you haven't already, I'm going to bring you back to something we talked about at the very beginning. We're going to put the optional demographics and feedback survey into the chat window. If you haven't completed this, please make sure to do so. We'd love to know how we did today and how we could make this better next time. Go ahead and save the date. The next public meeting is going to be next summer. We will have a little bit more to share there, but again, we welcome your feedback at any time in the study process. Just go to the website, send us an email. We look forward to hearing you all and appreciate you joining us today. And with that, we'll conclude today's webinar.